Welcome to How to Write a Story Step by Step. In this episode, I'm going to teach you an effective way to set up the beginning of your story. First, we'll walk through the reasons why the setup is so important to every story. Then we'll cover exactly how you can use specific techniques on how you can write a great setup to your story. I'm going to explain how to introduce your protagonist, how to hook your reader, and how to implement something called the first plot point, which includes foreshadowing and establishing the stakes. All of this with a big focus on establishing empathy, but not necessarily likability for your protagonist. Think of the setup as one section of your story. If you like the famous act structures in storytelling, it will be considered Act 1. But I know I told you we're going to forget about acts, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So forget about acts. The reason is because sometimes we can get too abstract with these terms, and I want to keep this as simple as possible. So the setup section of your story is just a way to group together a batch of milestones. It's helpful to get an overview of each milestone before we dive into them individually. And to make it even easier to grasp, let's visualize the setup portion of your story as a map. It's a simple way to get an overview of your milestones at a glance. This grouping is one piece of a map that has been grouped into 4 pieces. You have the first piece in your hands now. It's called the setup. The other 3 pieces, we'll pick those up later. I don't want to jump ahead. But we're going to do a total of 4 sections, just like the one we're about to do now, which is the setup. This is the first one, and it's called the setup because, well, it sets up your story. The setup contains your first group of milestones, which is you, need, and the first plot point. That's it. The setup is designed to give your audience someone to identify with. You let them see into your character's life before the story problem reveals itself. This way, the audience can understand what it means to the character when the story problem reveals itself. It's precisely why we spend so much time in the Shire with the hobbits before Frodo becomes the ring bearer. We, the audience, need to know what's at stake. We need to care about the Shire and the hobbits in order for the rest of the movie's drama to have any kind of emotional impact on us. We don't experience any tension for the survival of the Shire unless it becomes our home as much as it is the home of the hobbits. We don't experience any fear for Frodo's life until we see how much Uncle Bilbo and Gandalf are fond of him, or how pure hobbits are in general. When something happens to them, we will empathize with them because we got to know them first. If you're ever watching a movie and stuff starts happening to the characters and you just don't care what's happening, it's because they weren't set up properly. Or even worse, they were set up poorly. And I know that might sound like the same thing, but it isn't. Sometimes stories wrongly don't bother with a setup at all. Stuff just happens. Other times, stories are set up, but it's just set up wrong. And I know you want me to give you examples, but I don't want to pick on anyone. And I find it more useful just to show you tips on how to do it correctly. Larry Brooks, author of Storyfix, talks about the setup like this. The purpose of the setup is to bring the character into transition, into the first plot point through a series of scenes. Set up and foreshadow the core story, but not fully launch it. Now let's talk about how you can effectively apply this to your story. You essentially need to accomplish 3 specific things with your setup. The first thing is to establish a character. You introduce your hero doing something else before the story problem itself occurs. You're going to establish this character's philosophy and introduce the weakness they're going to overcome throughout the course of the story. And this setup portion of the story will end when something new arrives in your character's life that gives them something to achieve, aka the story problem that the character needs to solve. The inciting incident, if you want to call it that. Now this is just an overview of the setup. We're going to break this down even further in its individual components in the next 3 videos. And in the next episode, we're going to focus entirely on you. Well, not you, but the you of your story. Your protagonist, your main character, your hero. The one the audience identifies with. We're going to cover exactly how to establish a character. Thank you for watching this episode. My name is Michael Martin. I'll see you on the next one.